everybody. Happy Friday and welcome back to Beyond the Steps, the show that we talk about all things related to performance athletes, from racism, gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, science, psychology, and more. We have it all. And we're really excited to be back with you with our very good friends, Kristin Deiss and Michelle Loucadoux of Danscend, to talk about how we reframe failure for performance artists. This is something that we've dove in to a couple times in small ways throughout episodes, and now we're tackling it head on. And there are no better two people than to join us today than these two. We're very, very excited to have them back. So Melissa, why don't you tell everybody out there that doesn't know about our friends at Danscend, and then we'll get started.
Yes, Michelle Loucadoux has been a professional dancer and educator for over 30 years. She danced on Broadway, in ballet companies, and on film and television, and has traveled the world empowering young dancers. Michelle is a published author as well and has a master's degree in business and is passionate about creating a space for more compassionate and inclusive dance communities. Kristin Deiss is also a dancer, educator, yogi, and mom, living her best life through helping others improve theirs. She holds an MA in history and an MFA in dance, and is currently the chair of the commercial dance program at Houston College, Los Angeles. Having battled a JIA diagnosis that changed the trajectory of her dance career, Kristin is dedicated to helping dancers better cope with the challenges of the art form. Together, they have created Danscend, an amazing organization with the mission to bring mental wellness to the forefront of dance training by providing a space for educators, application and community to dancers, educators, and professionals. Welcome back. I don't know how many times this is that you have been on Beyond the Steps, but you are part of the Beyond the Steps family for sure. Welcome back.
Thank you. We're excited to be back.
This topic is one that is near and dear and very, very important, I think, because we're in this place of everybody gets a trophy and nobody actually fails anymore. And I think that that has at some places handicapped our kids in being able to actually understand what it means to not win and how that can actually be a catalyst for growth. So how can reframing failure empower performance artists to embrace risks and innovative approaches to their work? I'm going to throw that to Michelle first.
So I actually, we were so excited. We were going to divvy up the question. So I'm going to throw it to Kristin, because this is
right.
Kristin.
I
will take this. So, I mean, I, like you, Melissa, this is something near and dear to my heart. The concept of failure and feeling like a failure and what it means to fail is something that I think about almost every single day, just to be quite honest, because I've struggled with this a lot. In terms of my own identity, in terms of my own, thoughts about where my career path went and how I, did or didn't live up to some expectations. And so I think at the very, very, very foundation of failure is the important aspect of learning. To fail is a part of the learning process. And if we take that away, we misconstrue what it means to learn. We set up expectations that the first time we learn something, we're just going to get it. And if we don't get it, then we must not be good at it. There's something wrong with us, or there's something wrong with the teacher, or there's something wrong with the environment that's creating a situation in which we are not learning as quickly as we expect to. I always use the metaphor or the analogy of a baby learning how to walk. We were all this young child that didn't just stand up and run a 4K.
Right.
We stood up, we fell down. We took a step, we fell down. We failed, quote unquote, over and over and over and over and over. And did anybody at any point say to that child, you know what, I just don't think this is for you. You just don't
know
for you. No. I'm sorry.
Like, it's an interesting point, because yes, we all applaud when the baby walks, but there are the people out there that if the baby doesn't walk by a certain point, or the baby is struggling to walk at a certain time, there must be something wrong. Like as mothers, like I remember being, when my kids were little and, are they walking by now? They're not walking by now. What's wrong with them? Like, the books and the doctors and, the people that are around you. Oh, my so-and-so walked at this age. And so I totally agree with you about the definition of failure, and it's absolutely part of the process. But when ego gets in the way and when people get in the way of that process, that definition starts to change in people's minds. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah, 100%. You need a supportive environment. And I know that we're going to get into a lot about this topic, but if you are not in an environment, and that's your mind, that's the people that you surround yourselves with, that's your peers, that's your teachers, that's your family, that's your friends. If you're not in an environment that celebrates and champions failure, then the pressure to not fail is going to be so much so that you never take the first step to begin with, because you are so afraid of failing, and your fear of failure is going to stop you from getting better.
And I mean, and let's take dance for an example. If you're being instructed by a teacher or a director that failure is a bad thing to them, like that's how that triggers them in a way that, they feel like they have to perform. And that is passed down. We're inheriting that definition of failure from the people that are teaching us. Right. And that's a cyclical issue that we see in dance and other performance athletics.
Yeah, it's really tough. And I think everybody's definition of failure is different too. And it's like you have to define what it is to you. Failure for me is if you are failing, that means you're doing.
Absolutely.
And if you are doing, you're already ahead of the game, because that's the only way you're going to get to whatever goal you set for yourself, or whatever you define as success is not going to just come to you. You have to do something to get there. If you're not failing, you're not doing.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. That's very, very true. I think that there's also this idea that we talk about building, innovative approaches off of failure. So I have failed at something. Now I have to do something different, or I learned that I need to make a change. And for some reason, the idea of pivoting or changing your mind or doing something different has become like, oh my gosh, that's not what I had planned.
Yeah.
And now everything's a mess. And it's like, well, no. I mean, and as choreographers, I do it all the time. I set something, I come in the next week and I'm like, yeah, okay, ixnay on the formation over there. So here we go. And we're going to do it again. And that has never signaled to me as failure. So I just don't understand how we have gotten. How do you think, this is a totally off topic question, but how do you think, and this can go to either one of you, how do you think we've gotten here? Because I feel like that failure and that change and that pivot has been something that we as dancers over years have innately do. So how have we gotten to this point that failure or changing or pivoting has become like, oh my gosh?
I think that as a society, we've come to a place where we have an over-identification with achievement. You are what you do. We even ask people, like, what do you do? Yeah. Right? Like you are, like, people ask that, like, your profession is who you are, which is not what it used to be. And especially with social media, we're putting our achievements out there, our successes, our perfectly, retouched photos and all of that stuff. And when we over-identify with our achievement rather than the process itself, we feel like that we are completely hurt when we fail, because then we feel like we are not as good as we thought we were. So unfortunately, it's like, I think it's a societal thing too, and especially in dance. And as a mom too, when your kid messes up, you feel like, oh no, I'm a bad mom because my kid messed up, and everyone's going to think that, I'm not trying to teach my kid to walk well enough because they're not walking well enough, when, being who we are despite our achievements is kind of a much healthier way to experience the world.
So we did a whole segment with you guys on growth mindset a while ago. I think it was last year. I don't know. It was last year. They all blur together. But let's talk a little bit about how that growth mindset can be cultivated among performance artists to navigate setbacks and challenges effectively and healthily, right? So like how do we do that and incorporate that growth mindset?
Well, growth mindset is always championing process over product. And so it's releasing the outcome and really focusing on the process, which, to your earlier point, Melissa, there's more than one path that leads to the thing that you want. Mm-hmm. But in our narrow-mindedness, sometimes we only see that one path. And if that one path is not working, we can't even expand our view wide enough to notice that, hey, we could go around this way and get there, or we could go around this way or get there. Or sometimes.
So do you think that's ego? Do you think it's ego, or do you think it's something else? Do you think it's just the competitive nature we have as human beings to have to do that thing, right?
I think it's all of the above. I think ego plays a part, but I also think that the environment that we're in, it's like this. It's the debate of nurture versus nature, right?
Yeah.
I think it's both. I think that it is our tendency to be hard on ourselves because we have a negativity bias in our brain. But if we are also in an environment that champions that negativity and champions that there's only one way to success, and if you don't get it that way, then you're never going to get there, that doesn't help the matter, right? There's a bunch of different routes that we can take. And so the growth mindset is really about looking at the process and being proud of the process and every little step, whether that's a step back, a step to the side, a step forward, however you define it for yourself. It's looking at that instead of just constantly being fixated on the end product. And this is, Carol Dweck does a bunch of research in this area. This is heavily influenced by the influential adults in your life, by the teachers in your life, by the environment. If we're talking about dancing, this is heavily influenced by your training environment. So as educators, if you can really instill in your students that it's about the process, because guess what? That's really the only thing that we're in control of.
That's the process, right?
I can't, as an educator and as a dancer, I can't guarantee that I will land a triple pirouette perfectly. I can't. But what I can control and what I can guarantee is what I'm going to think about before I go into that triple pirouette, is having a clean preparation, those kinds of things, right? So it's that. And it's so hard to do because when you're in a dance class, you get excited. Everyone does, peers, instructors. When somebody gets that triple pirouette, it's like, yes, you've been working so hard. And this isn't to say that you should just, be like, oh, whatever. It's about the process, not the product, right? You should clap and applause and celebrate that they achieved this thing, but not at the expense of forgetting what it took to get there.
Right.
And so if we can consistently instill the importance of process. And what does process include? It includes learning. Be a lover of learning. Never stop learning. You don't just reach the end of learning ever, right? We have to instill that in our students and in ourselves. Learn. We have to understand that challenges are a part of life and they can be fun if you let it. I think that there's also this, I know for myself when I was younger, it was like, if something's hard, it must mean that I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
And we just don't talk enough about the fact that SHIT is hard for everybody.
Right.
Well, you can just say that. Yeah, you can just say
I can? Oh my gosh, so exciting. So shit's hard.
Right.
It's hard all over the place. It's just hard. My son, he just turned 5 and he's in this phase where one thing will go wrong
And
he goes, I'm having the worst day of my whole life. And I'm like, oh man, buddy, I hear you and I feel that. But guess what? Like, stuff's going to go wrong all the time. And we have to build the resilience to be okay with that and to keep going.
Well, and that's what I was going to say too. It really is a muscle that you have to develop and strengthen over time. And it can't just be when you're at said practice or rehearsal or training, right? It has to be in every aspect of your life. That's how you teach kids to deal with adversity and things that come at them, and resist the urge to fix it all the time, and let them help them go through that. That's one of the hardest things I'm learning as a parent. I'm not good at it or perfect at it yet, but I'm working on it. You give them the opportunities, but they have to work for it. You know, they have to earn it, and they have to go through the ups and downs of that process. So it is. I think it's really tough, but I think that the bottom line is it has to happen in all aspects of their life for them to learn how to automatically turn that on when they're in the studio. Right.
Yeah. 100%.
And I want to go back to something that Kristin said, because I am struggling with this in the studio with specifically my tweens, so 8 to 12.
That's like the hardest age anyway, in my opinion. Like that is just the hardest age.
Oh my gosh. But the 8 to 12 of what you said about, okay, pushing the process and trying to instill this growth mindset, then they go to the extreme and say, yeah, it's just about the journey. Ha ha ha. Goodbye. I didn't do anything today that actually, resulted in any type of productive work, but it's because it's the journey, right? Like they go all the way to the other end. What do you say to that? Like how do you balance it's the journey versus you actually do have to do stuff?
Yeah, well, the journey has little micro goals in it, right? Like the journey is the tiny little goals that are achievable that you set for yourself on the way to that big goal that maybe might not be in your control. So that could be a helpful thing for them in terms of like when they think about, oh, it's just the journey. Well, the journey requires action. The journey requires effort. And maybe your micro goal, sometimes when you just are at a loss, maybe that micro goal is I'm giving it the best effort I have today, or I am really going to work on my mindset today. I'm really going to work on my focus today. I'm really going to, whatever it is, like it could be something tiny, it could be something technically related. Like today in jazz, I'm really going to work on being aware of the placement of my arms. And that is nothing to scoff at. And I think that these young, by the way, your 8 to 12 are similar to my college students. When I ask them to set small goals like that, it's like, they do this. Yeah. Okay.
Because it doesn't seem big enough in their mind. It doesn't seem big enough.
But I mean, feel like it's going to move the needle for them.
Yeah.
I think
that makes sense.
I think what we're also working against is that dance is set up to feel like working towards something, having a big something, and then it's over. So you look at like a performance kind of structure, right? You have an audition, you're cast, you rehearse, you get on the stage, you do the show, and then the show is over.
There's always a carrot. There's always a carrot dangling, in front of you.
Like, or the competition or the nationals or whatever. So I think that another thing to do is to widen that view of it's not just this one show. It's not just this one competition. It's not just this one performance. It's not just this one audition, which is difficult with young people because young people inevitably have a smaller purview because they have less years to kind of, understand the longevity of a large kind of goal. So that can be hard, but it's also, I like to look back with my students at like last year at where they were, or 2 years ago where they were, and then talk about that kind of trajectory as opposed to just get ready for the performance. The performance is amazing. It's done, the end. And if you didn't do a good job, then, oh, well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. We're having a great conversation with Michelle Loucadoux and Kristin Deiss of Danscend. We're talking about how do we reframe failure in the dance community and for performance athletes in general. This is Beyond the Steps. I'm here with my fabulous friend and co-host, Melissa McDaniel Grisham, and we're having another great convo. So be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you just started watching, go back to the beginning and watch from the beginning. We have some great tidbits already to share with you, and we're excited to continue. So this is a great segue into how performance artists and athletes can differentiate between constructive criticism and detrimental feedback when encountering failure. Because so this one hits home for me because I've had several students over the years. Obviously you say the good and you say the things that I call them the challenges, right? The pros and the challenges that we have to tackle. But when you get to those challenges, no matter how much you praise the good stuff, that's all they hear. And, I've had kids collapse into a puddle of tears, and it's not the delivery, because I, always, are proud of how I deliver that information, but it's the collapsing in a puddle of tears because they don't want to hear that. So it's not detrimental, but there are in the dance world and other industries, there is feedback that is maybe detrimental. And so as a kid, where you're trained to respect the elders, and there's very much a hierarchy of how the dance world and other performance industries are set up. How do you differentiate between that? How do you make sure that you're accepting the things that are meant for your own best interests and your higher good, versus the people, the abusive stuff, which it does happen. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. It does happen in this business.
Yeah. I think the first thing that's important to recognize is that rejection and failure hurts. It actually kind of physically hurts. So Dr. Naomi Eisenberger did a number of studies where she attached fMRI scanners to people's brains. And then they played a game where they were part of a group and then they were rejected. The same parts of the brain lit up when they felt rejected, like they failed at that game, as when they were physically hurt. So she's actually quoted as saying, to us, a broken heart is very similar to a broken leg. So our brain really can't differentiate between like emotional hurt and physical hurt. It's really similar. So being able to like recognize that that's a thing is important. Because I think for me, like when I'm sad, like someone tells me something and I get upset, I'm like, just get over it, Michelle. Like you need to like toughen up and like be able to take that. But like actually my brain is saying like, hey, you're hurt. And I wouldn't, just get over it if I broke my leg. So I think the first thing with that is being able to recognize that it's a thing, and then being able to emotionally differentiate that. So if you have like a feelings wheel, you can look at it and kind of understand how you are feeling based on the feedback you got, right? So you can choose a very specific word, and the more specific the word you can choose, the more easily you can deal with it. So if I feel sad, that's one thing. But if you kind of like delve into that word sad, do you feel rejected? Do you feel hurt? Do you feel condescended to? Do you feel that finding a really specific word can help you break that down. But I will say the actual practicality of it, and I had a student come into my class the other day, and this was at the college, and she was like talking about how this other teacher had said something that had hurt her so much, and basically had told her like, your body is not built for ballet and you shouldn't be doing ballet. And I was like,
yeah. How is that still happening? Like, how is that still a thing? It's 2020.
Don't even get me started.
I don't even understand how conversations like that still happen, but I digress. Keep going.
They do. Apparently they do. So we did this exercise with the students in class, and we had them hold a piece of feedback, like pretend to hold a piece of feedback in their hand that they had gotten from a professor or from someone in the past, and decide if that was beneficial to them. It can be beneficial to you if it fuels you, if it makes you angry, if it becomes a chip on your shoulder that makes you go, I'm going to show up to class 30 minutes early and work on my stretching. But if it doesn't build you up, if it doesn't get you towards where you want to go, I have them physically mime like throwing it out the door. And then if it does, I have them physically mime putting it in their body and then using it, right? And then we talk about how people giving feedback are human, right? They might be sad, they might be hangry, they might have, trauma as far as like someone told them that their body wasn't right for ballet. So yeah, that's a lot to say.
It is. But then how do you recognize, how do you get them to, because there's two sides to this coin, right? You have a child who, may or may not have a problem accepting any feedback or any criticism. And, sometimes if it's delivered in a way that's acceptable and it's constructive, they may not see it that way. Them saying to let it go, that's not necessarily the right thing either. Like if it was delivered in a way that is helpful and like, we really need to take this piece of information, how do you get them to see that? But then on the flip side of the coin, there are clearly, and we are open about that on the show, there's the work that needs to be done on the judges' side too, because I've heard basically not heard very much constructive feedback from judges and people of that nature, where the feedback is like, are you kidding me? Like that's all you had to provide for the 3-minute piece that was on stage, like was a or a song or a that costume or whatever, like nothing constructive or helpful. And also recognizing that, like, how do you it's very much to the individual, I would think.
It's so hard. And I think, two ends of the spectrum, like to your first point is like, how do you get somebody to hear constructive criticism without shutting down?
When it's constructive.
When it's constructive, right. When it's real constructive criticism. I think, again, this goes back to really understanding what it is to learn.
Yeah.
And that when you are in the dance studio, you are learning. When you are rehearsing, you are learning. When you're at competition, you are learning. What does learning mean? I mean, how many people, like how many kids, if you asked a child, what does learning mean to you? Could they answer that question? Do they even know what goes into learning, what the process of learning is, what it requires? What is the role of a teacher? What is the role of a student? And how can we work together so that we all learn together? Those conversations, I think, need to happen. I think we assume that everybody knows what that is. And I personally didn't know what that was. Like I became a teacher and I was like, well, what do I do now? Like, so I think that if you start those conversations with kids when they're young, then the idea of dance as just a performative thing, we can kind of shift it and bring it back to, we're learning how to do this. And then we get the chance to perform and to try our skills. And then we come back and we learn some more, like we need to set that environment and have those conversations with our students. On the flip side, when I was young, Michelle, if you had asked me, take feedback that was given to you that doesn't serve you and throw it out, I wouldn't know that it didn't serve me. I wouldn't know that somebody who told me that I'm a good dancer, except my thighs are too big, I wouldn't know that didn't serve me, because that's what I was surrounded by. And if I think to myself, my goal is to become a professional ballet dancer, and this person, this expert, is telling me I'm not going to get there unless I have thinner thighs, well, that does serve me then. That does fuel me. That does fuel me to get thinner, right? Like that's what I would have said, because I didn't have anybody in my life at the time who was creating a context for me in which I could understand that was abusive. Or maybe that's a bit too far, that wasn't healthy for me, right?
So abusive is probably okay.
So I feel like these kids, number one, they need to learn what learning is. We need to teach them how to learn and what it requires of us, of them, of everybody in the room. We also have to be there for them when other people in their life are going to start shooting things at them that don't help them, so that they at least have somebody to come to and talk to, or they have our voice in their head that's like, well, wait a minute, is this actually helping me or hurting me? Like, we have to teach them to, because it's sometimes it's not enough to be like, is it going to get you to their goal, to your goal? Because they revere these experts.
Yeah.
And they think that they're
It's almost like parenting. Like, you have to advocate for the child until they can advocate for themselves, and teach them how to do that. So when you get a feedback from a judge, instead of, disregarding it and just pretending like it didn't happen or ignoring you, we're pointing out like, that was not okay, and here's why. And
100%.
It's not because they said something that we didn't like, or that, said something bad. It's mean, it's unhelpful, it's not the correct thought process, and it's toxic, and we're going to call it out for what it is.
Yeah. And that takes time, and that takes, it takes so much time that we don't have. But
and for all the organizations out there that might be listening, hire trained judges. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is your PSA.
And that's a hard thing. And if there are parents or guardians or dance families listening to this too, like, you can do that for your dancer. You can talk to them about what, just have conversations with them. Like, what kinds of things do you hear? What things do your teachers ask you to work on? And try to get some information and try to understand what they're hearing, because you can be advocates for your dancers' wellness too.
And understanding that criticism and feedback is okay. It's good. It's a good thing when it's constructive. It contributes to the learning process. But so often we put our kids in that room and we don't know what's going on, and we don't know what's being said. And we're trusting our, 6, 7, 8-year-old, 13-year-old children to come home and tell us that story. And their brains don't have, they're not connecting all the dots into things that are being told to them or said to them. And so it's just really good. I know when I was younger, my mom, she didn't know anything about dance. She knew I loved it, and she knew I was good at it, and she dropped me off. But as an adult, you look back and go, wow, there were things that going on that were not okay. Right. But like, you don't know that at the time.
You don't know that. And it was a different time also when we were growing up. Like, that idea of criticism was
very loose. It was very loose.
It was very loosey goosey. It was, and it was welcome a lot of times. It was welcome. This is a good lead into like metrics. So as a dancer, as a dance educator, we say, okay, the measure of success is this achievement level of competition, a first overall. This metrics is you did the turn. Those are the metrics. But how can we develop a different rubric that is based on personal growth, artistic development, intrinsic satisfaction versus external validation? Like, what would that rubric look like? What would be on it, I guess is my question.
I think that we all, as a dance society, have a very narrow view of success. And that we have set up a structure where you either win or you don't win. You either do that quadruple pirouette or you don't do a quadruple pirouette. So I think that all of us can think bigger. And I think that really like challenging ourselves to move outside of the, I either get the job or I don't. I'm either the sugar plum fairy or not, into a bigger, more longer time frame for success or failure or lack thereof, or learning is important. I love to brainstorm with dancers if they're going to an audition, right? If they're auditioning for a role, if you don't get a role, what is the bigger win? Right? What could be something bigger that could come out of that? Yes, you go in and audition for Grease and you don't get the role, you get cut. right? But then maybe that casting director remembers you and they call you in and you book Evita, a way bigger theater. Or what if you make a friend and then that friend 10 years down the line becomes a co-collaborator and then you create a company called Danscend with like literally your best friend. You know what I mean? So getting dancers to and educators to think outside of the box, outside of the do I win in this moment? What are the amazing things that can happen in this moment outside of the winning? Can you make new connections? Can you learn something that's going to be the key to unlocking a massively huger, much more exciting future?
But I don't think, and I think that's such a good point. And I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but I will say I don't think those stories have enough of a spotlight on them. I think people only see the successes of dance as or performance athletics in general. Take gymnastics, substitute any performance athletic event or industry into this and fill in the space. But you see the big championships, you see the big wins, but you don't go on to see that, the besties that created Danscend and are now impacting the dance world, the lifelong dancers that want to mitigate the injuries and not see what they had, and they created Apollo Performance Wear, because the dance world doesn't celebrate those things. The dance world, it only celebrates the performance, the final bow, the cap on a career, celebrates in some ways injury and the trials that it took to climb through that through a career. But you don't see the celebrations of people who have succeeded in dance but not on the stage. And that's because the publications, and I can go down to have this conversation all day, they're not writing about it because it's not interesting.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's the thing. It doesn't sell magazines. Nope. It doesn't get.
But it's reality. And there's so many more people that have found success in creating things to, bolster the dance world and nurture and love and give back to the dance world that I don't think are celebrated enough. And so kids don't see that as a possibility because it's not shown to them. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They also
it's not part of the rubric.
Yeah. And just in general, larger than dance, like we just, as a society, we don't celebrate failure. We don't, we tend to like romanticize the success stories, and we have no idea what went into it. Like, how many times have you heard, oh, they're just lucky. Like they just got famous and they just became successful because they were just lucky. Like we have no concept of how many hours it took for them to get to where they are.
How much they gave up. What did they give up?
Right. How much they sacrificed, what they did, the hard work. We just immediately see the outcome and we're like, oh, they just got lucky. And it's such a ridiculous thing that we all do. Like I was doing this thing for a while where I wanted to research who we think are successful people. I don't know why I'm doing this. They are successful people, and and see like where they failed. Walt Disney lost his first animation character to a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey was fired from a television gig at like 24, and the person said, "You're just not made for TV." Vera Wang, like what she changed careers so late in life, and look how much she was able to accomplish. Like those are the moments that we're not talking about.
Yeah.
And I think I like to say that the practice scene in Rocky is 2 minutes long, but it covers like five years, like we like to condense all of the hard work. But there's also this kind of newer, like, let's get discovered now kind of, I call it like the American Idol kind of syndrome, where people think that they can just show up and win because they don't show the hard work. So I did Brigadoon at Theater Under the Stars in Houston in 2003 with Adam Lambert. He played Charlie Dalrymple. He did my eyeliner every morning and we shared a car. Like it was, but then like maybe 8, 9, 10 years later, he was on American Idol and it looked like, oh, here's this amazing human that just got discovered. And I was like, no, I watched him in his hotel room doing vocal exercises for like into the night. Like he was always practicing singing, but we don't see that. And that's not shown. And that's a huge detriment to the learning process of our kids.
Great point.
Yeah,
great point.
Absolutely. Especially in this social media age, it's not shown. And I would encourage people who are influencers. Here I go with my air quotes, influencers, or have this social media persona to show the other side. Show the other side. Don't just show the success. To help move us forward in this area. If you are just now joining us, we are talking about how we reframe failure for performance artists with Kristin Deiss and Michelle Loucadoux from Danscend. This has been an amazing show. You can watch the entire show from the beginning. They are all on YouTube at Apollo Performance and at TP Dance Creations. We still have a few more questions left, so please continue hanging there with us. Also comment. We want to hear what you think. Share this episode and invite others to watch it as well. I want to talk about techniques and tools that performance artists can utilize to maintain motivation and momentum following a failure or disappointing outcome. So we've talked about, we shouldn't think about failure like this. We shouldn't do this, but we do. We do think about failure as something that is devastating, or something that we are projecting on ourselves as being something wrong with us. So in those moments, while we're learning to make this shift in our mind, what are some tools that we can use to stay motivated?
I think that so I might be getting ahead of myself, but this is a fantastic tool and probably the most important one. When we fail, our brains don't actually learn what to do. Our brains learn what not to do. So if I say, for example, I'm trying to hold on to something that's hot, right? Like I have to pick up something that's hot and I touch it with my hand, my brain is going to learn, don't do that, right? That's hot. Don't touch it with your hand. Is my brain going to automatically come up with a way to do it? No, it doesn't, right? Okay. Like that action, and this is backed by scientific studies, that action is now ingrained in my brain as don't do that. But it didn't actually teach me what to do instead. I have to initiate that process. I have to sit down and reflect and think about, okay, what other options are there for me? How else might I be able to do this? And I have to experiment. And this is kind of what science is all about. My sister is a scientist. I love saying that because I'm just so proud of her. She's a scientist. And I used to talk to her all the time about this idea of like failure and, oh my gosh, and what should we be doing? And it's like, it just hurts so much. And she's like, you treat it like a scientist. You experiment over and over and over. And every time that you quote unquote fail, you learn what not to do. And so you try something else. And then you put that in your basket of what not to do. And then you try something else. And maybe something in that part works. So you put that in your basket of what to do. You must have this self-awareness and this reflection, or you don't learn from failure. All you do is you internalize it. You make it a part of your identity. I'm a failure. I can't do anything right, blah, blah, blah. And it actually paralyzes you from taking that next step and trying again. So if we can, as much as possible, bridge that, like make some distance between the mess up and who we are as a person, then we're able to look at it and identify, what don't I want to do again in the future? Like, what about that is not going to help me? What about that might help me? And then we try again. And this is, it's like learning is just a big experiment. Life is just a big experiment. Every time we do something, we're just learning how to do it a little bit better the next time. But we don't learn how to do it a little bit better the next time if we don't actually have the courage to look at it in the face, which is very hard and very scary. But it's like anything, it's like a skill. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And if you just turn away from it because it scares you and you don't want to deal with those hard feelings, you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to see what you are capable of.
I love how you just said that. I love that.
Yeah,
I'm going to say that to my kids and I am done today. I am. I'm going to say it. I'm going to write it down and say it.
And it's hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to look at my, failures. I want to look at my mistakes. I'm so scared. I can't do it. It's too hard. There are, utilize the people in your life that are there for you that can help you do that. And that's what I still do that. I still do that. When something goes wrong and I'm like devastated and I can't push past it myself, I immediately call my mom.
Oh my God, I know. My husband's like, seriously? Like, you're 42. Like, you get on the phone with your parents and just talk it out, or I'll like sit and talk. I'm like, it helps. I don't know.
It does.
This is science backed.
I'm like, I pity you because you don't have this part of you. Like, you don't have the need to do that. You're holding so much in. I just get it out.
Yes.
Well, that's actually, there are a number of things that does. So Emily and Amelia Nagoski wrote this really great book called Burnout, Completing the Stress Cycle. Evolutionarily, when we had a stressful situation, we'd be sitting around the campfire and then there would be like a bear. We would run, we would chase the bear, we would kill the bear. And then we came back to the campfire and we told the story of how we killed the bear. We talked to our community. We incorporated our community. And one of their theories is that the reason that we as a society stay in kind of a state of low key stress all the time is that we're not completing the stress cycle. We're not coming back to community. We're not talking about our challenges, talking about our successes and communing with each other. We're just in this spinning kind of keep killing the bear kind of situation rather than like calming down and sharing and being a part of other people that are sharing as well.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. We keep killing the bear, and then we don't tell anybody else how to kill the bear. Yeah. We just all out killing bears left and right, and no one else knows. Like, how did you do that? We have to be able to sit back and share the information. If you're just now joining us, this is Beyond the Steps. We are coming to the close of our show, but you can watch this on YouTube at Apollo Performance or at TP Dance Creations. As you both know, we love homework here at Beyond the Steps. We give homework every single week. So we would love for you to give our viewers one small step they can take in the next 7 days to make progress in this area.
All right. I have one.
Let's go.
Start to change the cycle. Share a failure. Publicly share a failure with someone, with your class, maybe on social media. Show yourself messing up. Here, I'm going to start. This is me in my beautiful Danscend farmhouse, which is also a garage.
Yes.
Nobody's not a failure. That is not a failure. I disagree.
But it's an imperfection. And I think the more we celebrate our imperfections, like the more we allow ourselves to be human.
I love it.
Yeah. Mine is very similar. It's less public. So if that part scares you, maybe this one will be a little bit less scary. For the next 7 days, every single day, before you go to sleep, write down one thing that you perceive, because this is also a real thing, right? Some of our perceptions of failure might not match others' perceptions of failure. Write down one thing that you perceive that you failed at that day. And then I want you under that 2 bullet points. Write down a thought you have about that failure that is not going to serve you. Get it out. Write it down and then cross it out. I am a failure. I always do this. I always mess up. Why do I stink? Whatever it is, right? Cross it out and then write one thought about it. Like, think about it. What did it teach you in that moment? So for instance, for me this morning, trying to get everybody out the door before we did this. And the time was right on me. And I'm like, I kind of lost it on my 5-year-old. Kind of lost my cool. So I would write that down. And then maybe the thought that I would have about it that doesn't serve me is like, I'm a terrible mom.
Right.
Cross that out. And what do I learn about that? I learned that time, the pressure of time, that's when I really need to be self-aware. When I feel the pressure of time, I need to shift my mindset and be like, okay, that's my trigger. That's what activates parts of me that I don't love or that aren't helpful. And then I have to reshift. So if you do that for 7 days, I'll tell you, number one, you're going to start to figure out how you even define failure. What does failure even look like for you? Number two, you're going to start to become friends with those negative things that you think about yourselves. And you're going to be okay with them being there, because that's never going to go away. But you do need to let that go. And then number three, hopefully you're going to start to get into the habit of reflecting on those moments, looking at them in the face, being brave enough to say, what about that, though, can I take with me moving forward? Because the whole thing is not bad. There's little nuggets of gold in there. We've got to extract them, and you'll start that process and hopefully fail.
I love that. I think I'm going to take that challenge this week too. And because I think by doing that, you're going to be able to look back and see a pattern of how you perceive yourself and what you're placing importance on, which may, like you said, not be serving you. I love it. And thank you both for, obviously being here, but also being so open and vulnerable and honest and direct. I love that. And another great conversation with all of you. You have your homework from Michelle and Kristin, and we give you homework every week. It's the same homework every week. Take our Steps Initiative course. It's completely free. Go at your own pace. Melissa's going to put the link there for you, but it's so, so important. It kind of served as a basis for this show, a launch pad for this show. It's a course of resources and evidence-based material curated by experts in each field. It's going to cover racism, gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, psychology, and of course, dance, medicine, and science. It is a great course. It's a great foundation to lay for you, your team, your family. Anyone can take it. And again, it's completely free. So please utilize this resource. You can find it on our website at the link below. Michelle and Kristin, tell us how people can get a hold of you. We want people to be able to utilize Danscend and learn about all the amazing things it has to offer. And then obviously the both of you.
So you can find us at danscend.com, Danscend. You can also find us on Instagram at danscendofficial. If you go to danscend.com right now and you sign up for our newsletter, we'll send you a code to join our worldwide group of dance educators for free for a month. We bring in mental health professionals. We send you worksheets. We send you one-sheets. We send you a video and a podcast and all the things every week to help you support the mental health and wellness of your dancers, but also yourself.
That's fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you both. Yeah, thank you both so much for being here. This was just amazing. And for everybody watching out there.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here, and we can't wait to have you back.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Join us next week for Beyond the Steps, everyone, when we will be talking to Lauren Newby about should dance educators be teaching strength and conditioning classes? Eek! Don't beat us up. I know we think dance educators should be able to do everything in the world, but we're going to have this very honest discussion about should we really be doing that just because we can? But until then, rewatch this episode, like, share, go back on YouTube, tell your friends, comment, let us know what you think. And do your homework. Until next time, continue your journey beyond the steps. See you next week.
Bye.